Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Mentor Nation podcast. I'm your host, John Abbas, and if you're watching this, my left eye is bloodshot. I think I popped a blood vessel and it just won't go away, so I have no choice. I have to record with a bloodshot eye. If you're listening or watching and this is your first episode, I want to welcome you and just ask that you hit that subscribe button. That way you're updated every single time a new episode releases and you'll be the first to know. Okay, so my guest today is, I'm excited, guys. Look, I have a very special man coming on today. He's helped millions of people around the world live much better and just more successful lives. Years ago, I read his book, The 4-Year Career. Obviously, it had a super catchy title, and I picked it up and, it just was an incredible book. And ever since then, years ago, I've been a huge fan of his, and I've just been a big follower of Mr. Richard Bliss Brooke. Richard is a best-selling author. He's the owner of 3 separate multi-million-dollar companies that he runs remotely from his private island in Hawaii. He lives on Lanai Island, which, if you've never heard of that, it's this private island owned by the founder of Oracle. And so obviously to live there, you have to be pretty successful. And so not bad, especially for someone who was working in a chicken plant, cutting up chickens in his 20s with no ambition to do anything more than just working his way up the ladder. Pretty incredible. So if you think about it, how does someone with not much ambition who comes from a farming background and is literally working, cutting up chickens for work, how does he become a millionaire by age 30 and a multi-millionaire soon after? Well, that's what today's episode is about. Richard shares his story, how he rewired his own mind for success, but most importantly, how you can do the exact same thing. This is just such a great interview, and I'm so glad that you're here to enjoy it. So without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. Richard Bliss Brooke. Richard, we are live. Thank you so much for being on the Mentor Nation podcast. I've been looking forward to this interview for some time now. So just thank you for being on. Thank you for your time today.
Hey, you're welcome, John. It's a great honor. I'm excited for it. Let's do it.
Awesome. So I was explaining to you a little earlier, I originally put this interview together a few weeks ago and, just big fan of yours, read The 4-Year Career right after I read The 4-Hour Workweek. So that was my mindset back then, right? Like, how do I condense time frames and get where I need to go? And I loved your book, and I built the interview over the holidays, and, you sent a little package and it had your other book, Mach 2, in there. And I didn't know what that book was about. So I just started reading it. And I mean, 15 pages in, I was just blown away, and I knew that I needed to change this interview. Your explanations and examples on just the mind and self-motivation and creating a vision were so powerful that I really thought it would be a disservice to the audience listening today not to talk about that. And so I really wanted to just focus my questions today on those topics and really just the components that it takes to achieve and execute a massive vision, regardless of where anyone listening to this podcast is right now in their life. And I just want to add one other thing. And the reason why is because, you've done it. I love to research my guests, and you were one of the most fun people to research. I mean, how do you go from working at a chicken plant, cutting up chickens, to becoming a millionaire by age 30, to building 3 global businesses, and now you live in Hawaii with your wife in paradise, running a global operation, inspiring millions of people. And I refuse to believe that you can do that by accident. It had to be by design. And so I just wanted to start by having you share a little bit about your story. How do you go from cutting up chickens for no money to becoming a millionaire and changing your entire life in just a short period of time?
Well, you have the good fortune of the chicken plant, which was the name of it was Foster Farms. It's based in California. It's a really big company. I had the good fortune of somebody in the administrative department of Foster Farms arbitrarily decide that people in the company could not hold management positions above the one I held at the time, which was low level. I had a white hard hat and I made $1,200 a month. So it's not like I was high up in management.
Right.
But they passed a policy that you couldn't go past that position without a 4-year college degree. And I didn't have any college. I cheated to get out of high school, and I wasn't going to go to college. And so that was a hard pivot, because I had my whole life planned out at Foster Farms. It was a very comfortable place to work, kind of fit in my domain. I was raised on a farm and a cattle ranch. And so, to cut up chickens for a living kind of fit for me and didn't ask too much of me. I was a big fish in a small pond. Right. If you spoke English and you were Caucasian at the chicken plant, you were management material. So because nobody else spoke English, right? And nobody else probably even went to traditional school.
Right.
And so by them changing that policy, a hard pivot, I didn't intend to pivot, but they forced it. And the only thing that I was looking at, the only person in my life that was encouraging me to do something besides the chicken plant was a high school buddy of mine that had gotten involved in business. And he wanted me to look at the business. And I didn't want to look at the business. I didn't like business. I didn't know anything about business. It had a heavy sales component to it. I didn't want anything to do with any of that. But I didn't have any other options. So I looked. And, one of the things you asked me, like, how did all of this happen? One of the things that has served me well in the last 45 years is curiosity. Mm. I've always been curious. And I think it was kind of born on the farm and the ranch. I grew up in a lot of solitude. I spent a lot of time, looking at weird things, on the farm and the ranch and, trying to figure out, well, how does that happen? Right. And
right.
So I was always curious. And so I went and looked at this business thing. I was curious. I didn't understand it. I didn't like it. I couldn't see myself doing it. But I just kept looking because I was curious. And the more I looked, the more, of course, it started to make a little bit of sense. But the real component that made it all happen, John, is the people that were involved in this business were unique business people. It wasn't for them just about money or selling product or operating a business. They were ambassadors of what you and I would know as the personal development movement or the transformational movement. And I'd never met anybody that spoke anything like that. I didn't know anything about, I didn't even know what positive mental attitude was. I'd never read any books, never listened to anybody like that. And I was fascinated with the idea that these people espoused that, if they were to ask me enough questions to learn enough about me and authentically what I wanted to do with my life, if, like they created the context is, if there were no limits, if you could do anything, if you could live anywhere, if you could earn any amount, right? I'm like, what? Really? Wow, that's kind of weird. And so I was just really attracted to these people and their message, their mentoring, their coaching, their interest in me, which nobody'd been interested in me before. Not even my parents seemed to be interested in me. And so I followed them. And of course, they were in this business. And if you wanted to follow them, you had to do the business. So that's how I ended up in business. And I failed miserably for 2.5 years because I just didn't have the skills. I didn't have the attitude, but I didn't quit because I didn't want to go back to the chicken plant. And so eventually, I'm just an example of, hey, any of us can become anything if we put ourselves in the right environment and we continue to assault old beliefs, replacing them with new beliefs. And if you're a hardened criminal like I was, it might take 2.5 years of constant assaulting those old beliefs to soften them up and shift them. But once they started to shift, I happened to, not by choice, not by intellect, not by any kind of, just by happenstance, I happened to end up in a business model that had extreme amounts of leverage,
Right.
and no limit to the upside of your income. And, I wrote a book called The 4-Year Career because 4 years later, I had 30,000 people working for me independently. I didn't even have to employ them, right? They were all independent salespeople. And, I was making more money in a month than my dad made in a couple of years. And so anyway,
Right. That's
everything that happened after that was pretty easy, right? Just kind of fail forward. And
absolutely. And I want to focus our time on that right there, that shift, because, even the people listening today, I feel like a lot of them have a head start over you because, and correct me if I'm wrong, in your book, you were actually okay working at the chicken plant. Like you were content. Like
I loved it.
A lot of the people listening, they have big dreams and the big desires, and they're just trying to figure out how to get there. But you came from being okay with being there, like satisfied, to then expanding your vision, to then achieving that vision. And so I think that right there is really powerful. And in your book, you just go into so much depth, which I have it right here. Everybody, you got it. You have to get this book. Like you just have to trust me. There's just so much on the way that the mind works. And I really want to have you share that. So for someone listening that it's 2021, it's a new year. They really want to take the first step to dramatically creating different results than they had in 2020. Like, where do they start? Like, where do they start with their mind? What do they do?
Well, if I was coaching somebody, and you can kind of coach yourself, I suppose, if you have some coaching on how to do that. But I would just start with asking the audience individually some questions. And I would start with, what's the most important thing to you? So one of the processes that I work with in the book and my coaches work with me on is we're really limited in our personal power, our ability to produce magnificence in the world, as long as we're playing somebody else's game, as long as we're operating our lives on a set of shoulds. So you should do this. So, so many of us were raised in the paradigm of you should get good grades, you should go to a good school, you should get a good job with a good company and stay there. Now, if you're in your 20s and 30s, you're the product of a new paradigm, which is more, well, yes, maybe you should get good grades and you should get a good job, but then you should just keep looking for a better job and leave that company every 4 or 5 years and get a better job and a better job and a better job.
That's right.
It's just a different paradigm, right? But still, most of us are living lives of shoulds based on what our parents told us we should do with our lives, or other authority figures, which can be the media, it can be politicians, it can be clergy, it can be teachers, but primarily it's our parents telling us what we should do with our lives. And one of the big breakthroughs that I found in my life is I believe we're all individuals. And yes, we are a product of our upbringing, but inside of that product, there is an authentic being, a critical thinking and feeling being that may have legitimate, honorable urges to go outside the should box and do something different, right, and be someone different and break the rules, if you will. And my experience is until you're living an authentic life, you and I are not very powerful. The most powerful people on the planet are the people that got in touch with what's important to them and go do that. Now, that doesn't mean it violates what your parents wanted you to do necessarily. Right. It might be in line with what who your parents wanted you to be. But if you don't have the freedom to choose independently of who the world wants you to be, you leave 90% of your horsepower on the table. So the first inquisition I would have with people is, who are you? Who are you independent of who everybody else wants you to be? Like, if you could get away with it, I don't mean criminal acts, or deviant acts, but if you could get away with doing something honorable, if you could do anything, if you could be anyone, if you could live anywhere, what would you do? So the first conversation is a no limits conversation. And most people hear no limits as, oh, I can make as much money. Well, that's part of it. But a bigger part of it is no limits on the circle of wholeness. Like if you could be anyone, who would you be?
Right.
And all of the purpose of all of that is to find your authentic self, find your bliss, if you will. And once we get some traction around that, then the conversation shifts to, well, let's just say it's money, because money is a big part of what people are pursuing.
Yes, sir.
The conversation is, what do you want to do? What do you love doing? And, I find so many people that are in online marketing, or, maybe they're in real estate or mortgage broking, or they're in network marketing, and they're in that profession because they think they should, because everybody told them that's where the money is. Mm-hmm. And yet maybe what they really love doing is teaching or sailing or coaching soccer or, painting or something like that. And so I might coach them, hey, you're going to have the greatest happiness and the greatest success in life, perhaps pursuing your bliss, which may not be the stereotypical, here's how you make the most money in life, right? So part of what you gain by finding your authentic self is you might have to give up some things that you thought you should do because everybody else is doing them. I don't know. So one of the things as a coach is I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions. And we're going to find some traction in what you want to do and who you want to be. And then what I'm going to suggest that you do is find the beliefs, the stories that you have that limit you. And you probably remember in the book, John, I talk about green lights, yellow lights, red lights. And those
Absolutely.
are just simple ways to define the kind of stories that we have around who we are and what we want to do. And most of us have red light and yellow light stories. A red light story, you may want to do something, really big distinction I talk about in the book, which was a huge breakthrough for me. I thought if I wanted something bad enough, I'd have the motivation to get it. And I think I might even have got that from Think and Grow Rich. And what I learned for me, and I just offered as a perspective for other people,
right,
is that desire doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, if desire had something to do with success, everybody'd be skinny and rich, right? But they're not. In fact, 97% are not. Why? Because wanting something does not give you the actual energy that's required to go get it. It just kind of points you in a direction. What gives you the energy to go get it is the stories, the dominant stories that you tell yourself about the inevitability of getting it, about who you are that deserves to get it, about who you are that's going to do the work today to get it. And most people have a story that sounds like, well, I really want to, but, right? So whatever comes after the but, that's your story. And so I really want to, but I don't have time, but I don't have the education, but no one will listen to me, but everybody says no, but, right? There's some but, and you want to pay attention to that story and even go to the extent of writing it out so you can see, oh my gosh, this is what I believe. This is who I am. And John, you and I don't have a strong tendency. We can have spikes, an aberrational spike. We can, do something counter to who we are very temporarily. But long-term, you and I are not going to perform outside of who we are. And so those stories determine who we are. And who I was as a chicken chopper, I wanted the success that the business offered. But my story was, but I'm too young, but I don't have a college education, so no one will listen to me. The catch-22 conversation or story is really popular. I want to make $10,000 a month, but no one will listen to me because I don't make $10,000 a month.
Absolutely. You bring up a really good point here. I want to spend a couple of minutes on this because I think everyone listening can agree that every year, I mean, not necessarily on New Year's, but we always set goals. And I think one of the hardest things, and you just touched on it, and I heard this also from Tony Robbins. He said it almost identical to the way that you said it. It says, you don't get what you want, you don't get what you desire. You'll always get in proportion to how you view your self-identity. And I think so many people set goals, whether it's a fitness goal, a financial goal, and they have the desire, they have the intention. Something happens, they don't know what, they don't hit their goal, and they're caught waiting until some other event happens in their life, or some date like New Year, or some movie that they watch, or one of their best friends became successful that reignited that motivation. Now they set goals and they just get into this cycle of doing it. And you do such a great job in your book explaining how the subconscious and the conscious works. I have a quote that I want to read, and I want to have you elaborate on, because it was my favorite quote in your book. And it says, "Because I cry in a movie that I know is not real, I can accomplish anything to which I set my heart's desire." What did you mean by that? How does that apply to people achieving and changing their story and having success?
You remember when The Secret came out?
Yes, sir.
I was so excited in anticipation of The Secret. I mean, I thought, wow, finally, all the authority figures on manifestation are coming together, and they're going to combine all their credibility and all their magnificence and experience, and they're going to share with the world what The Secret was. So I watched The Secret, with great anticipation all the way to the very end. And then I don't remember who I was watching it with, but whoever it was, I turned to him and I said, they never told people what The Secret was.
That's exactly right.
So I thought, oh, well, I guess this was just an hour-long infomercial. It really wasn't. So if there's a secret, which it's not really a secret, but if there's a piece of neuroscience, let's put it this way, if there's a piece of neuroscience that allows you and I to change from a chicken chopper to a champion, or whoever you are now and whatever your story is now, to a magnificent story that would attract whatever abundance you want in your life, the secret in neuroscience is this: the part of us that is immensely powerful, and I'll distinguish that like this. Okay, I'm going to say from here down is the part of us that's immensely powerful. Most people know kind of the subconscious mind as, half of the mind, right? And that's part of us that's immensely powerful, is the subconscious mind. But then there's also the spiritual self. There's the emotional IQ. There's the gut, or our intuition, which there's immense science today that says the gut is far more intelligent than even the subconscious mind is. It's fascinating science around how powerful our gut is. But if you take everything from here on down, here's the piece of neuroscience that is the secret to change or manifesting something different than we have now in our life. This part of us cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and reality. This part of us cannot tell the difference between the reality is, let's say, my relationship with my primary person in my life. The reality is, let's say my role in that relationship on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 2. I sabotage it, I argue, I'm aloof, I make people wrong, I blame, I withhold, right? All of the things that make a relationship less than ideal. Let's say that's reality. The part of us that's powerful cannot tell the difference between me in that role, sabotaging my relationship, can't tell the difference between that and me imagining being a brilliant partner that does nothing but champion and edify and listen and support and nurture and hug and be present and all of those things. So by virtue of the neuroscience trick that this part of us cannot tell the difference between us actually being magnificent in a relationship and just imagining it, what we can do is train the manifestation part of us. This, from here on down, is the part of us that, here I'll use examples that Martin Luther King used to move hundreds of millions of people or tens of millions of people, that Mahatma Gandhi used, that Mother Teresa used, that John F. Kennedy used, that Ronald Reagan used, that, any one of the popes used. Just think of magnificent leaders that moved millions and millions of people. They did it with this part of them. And of course, there's billionaires that you could use as examples, and great authors and artists. Those of us that have manifested magnificent accomplishments in our lives, we use this part of us. This part of us, from here on up, let's just call that the conscious mind. And what is that good for? Memorizing the answers to the tests, following the rules at work so you don't get fired, getting good grades, understanding don't touch a hot stove, don't cross a busy street, all those kind of rules of the road. And what the conscious mind does is it allows us to be right, to stay right, to survive in life, but it doesn't make billionaires. What it makes are people that don't get fired. What it makes are people that get good grades in school. It makes mediocrity, because what controls the conscious mind is this addiction to being right. We always have to be right. We always have to look good. And that keeps us small in a small world that conscious mind creates. The subconscious mind, hey, anything is possible. And how you trick, if you will, or train the subconscious mind, or the part of us that is magnificent, is just to imagine. And we get to make it up, right? Make it up. Make up who you want to be. Make up how you want to roll in the world, how you want to feel, how you want to see, how you want to talk, how you want to listen. Just make it up. Right. Sit down and write it out as though it could happen. And you take that magnificent creation and you just study it. Just study it. Just read it. As you read it, watch the movie. The third layer past watching the movie is allow yourself to feel emotionally how you will feel if that were to be taking place. Just imagine it. Just visualize it. It's as simple as that. Now, why is that so powerful? Because to this part of us, it's as though in that moment, let's say it's a 60-second segment of time that you visualize this. For that 60 seconds, it's as though you were that person experiencing that. It has the exact same imprinting quality as though you had actually done it. So if you could use this as an analogy, this is kind of a crass analogy, but let's say your goal is to make $50,000 a month, right? And maybe you make $10,000 a month now, right? So if you had made $50,000 a month, actually made $50,000 a month, let's say for the last 12 months, that was your income for the last 12 months, what would you expect your income to be the 13th month?
Same.
$50,000, right? Yeah. So if all of a sudden you made 8, notice the massive physiological, emotional, intellectual intolerance you would have for the 8. You would be like, what? There's got to be some mistake here. This is not who I am, right? So you would get very motivated to fix the end result. If your income actually dropped down to 8, you would go in there and figure out what happened. What was the metric? What did I miss? What would you do the next month? You'd fix it, right? You'd be right in there fixing it. Why? Because you make $50,000 a month. And in the simplest terms, John, the reason people that make $10,000 a month continue to make $10,000 a month is every month when they get the next $10,000, they tolerate it. Why?
So powerful.
Because it's who they are. Because it's what they expect. It's because, oh, well, there it is again. There I go again. I sure wish I could make $50,000 a month. I'm going to try. I'm going to work real hard. I'm going to invest. I'm going to buy more courses. I'm going to hire more coaches, right? We'll do those things. But as long as you don't see yourself as somebody making $50,000 a month, as long as you tolerate the 10, that's what's staying in place. And the neuroscience trick is the part of us that changes identity cannot tell the difference between you making $50,000 a month and imagining it. And then here's the second secret. You only make $50,000 a month one time in a month. The affirmation, if you will, is every time you get paid. However that works, right? So if I make $50,000 a month, in reality, I make $50,000 one time a month. Now, I may add up lots of pieces of income, but when it gets to 50, that happens one time, right? I made $50,000 in that month. But how many times can I visualize making $50,000 a month?
All the time.
I can do it 20 times a day. I can do it 50 times a day. I can do 100 times a day. Times 30 days, that's 3,000 times, right? So I can, through spaced repetition, accelerate the belief building process, the transformational process of my identity. I don't have to make I don't have to do the catch 22 of, well, I can't be somebody that makes $50,000 a month until I make $50,000 a month. And then I have to do it like 10 times in a row before I really, no. You can do all of this in 90 days. And what happens in 90 days? It's not that you need to all of a sudden be driving a Maserati and wearing a $3,000 suit and speak like Bob Proctor. And no, all you need to do, John, all I did, I'm sure all you did, is just lean in a little bit, right? Just change your identity enough to lean in to the daily things that lead to $50,000 a month. Lean into those opportunities, make those phone calls, return those phone calls, reach out the text messages, write something that before, as a $10,000 a month identity, you might say, well, I need to write a blog, or I don't have time. I'm not sure what to write about. Oh, I don't think that'll be good enough, right? Those are all red light, yellow light stories. So when you do this transformational work, you start to say things like, today I'm going to write. And you actually write. Today I'm going to make a phone call. Today I'm going to make 5 phone calls. Today I'm going to do a podcast. It's not that we need to transform ourselves into the end result of a $50,000 a month earner. We just need to transform ourselves into somebody that does the work.
Right.
That leads to it and does it every day. And then it's inevitable. How long does it take to get from 10 to 50? Well, I don't know. It might take a year or two, right? But if you're doing the work every day that a $50,000 a month person does, it's inevitable.
This is such a powerful point, because I feel like so many people get stuck there. They're like, well, I've envisioned myself being a millionaire. But they're missing that key component, right? It's like you envision it over repetition. It's like in your book, you talk about, you have the 2 jars, right? You have vinegar and water. And it's like, there's literally only one way to replace that vision. You just keep pouring the water into the vinegar jar until the vinegar is gone. And you have like literally a whole new identity. And even if you don't know what that $50,000 a month work is yet, your subconscious will figure it out, because it's like, you've tricked it into believing that's where you need to be. You'll figure out how to get there, even if you don't know at this point. And that's just so powerful, because I feel like so many people take the time to envision it once or twice. I'm a multi-millionaire, but they're missing the 90% right after that is necessary. That's so powerful.
It's kind of a hilarious irony about why so many people have studied self-motivation, but so few people master it.
Right.
Because you actually have to be self-motivated to get self-motivated. Right? So the secret is, okay, do the work, write the vision, get the little video clips, get the music, get the pictures, do that. I mean, millions and millions of people. I've put tens of thousands of people through workshops who on that day or that 2-day, they did the work, right? And they went home and they looked at it, like you said, twice.
That's right.
Right? But they didn't look at it the third time. Why? Because their conscious mind told them that won't work. You're silly if you do that. Don't let anybody see you do that. Don't tell anybody you went to one of those workshops, right? Oh, who are you to think you can be one of those people?
That's right.
That's all the conscious mind keeping us stuck in our comfort zone. That's its job. And, it has an upside. It'll get you a job. It'll get you an education. Some people take their conscious mind all the way to being a doctor, right? They make $500,000 a year as a doctor. Most people use their conscious mind to make $50,000 to $75,000 a year. That's all it's good for. If you want to totally transform yourself, you have to trust transformation. You have to trust the process. And the most important vision to create is not the grand end game where, I'm 25 pounds thinner or, I'm making $50,000 a month or whatever the end game is. The most important vision to create is the vision of who you are every day that does the work.
Man,
like fall in love with the process of doing the work. If you want to lose 50 pounds, it doesn't matter that you have a vision of you skinny on the beach. What matters is that you have a vision of you eating vegetables, right?
Yeah, no, I actually wrote that quote down because I think a lot of people miss that. They get so caught up on the result that they miss the process. And, the quote here, and I wrote this down and it's just, it's amazing. It says, the essence of being truly alive comes from falling in love with the process of your dreams, always stretching, always being in momentum, because even when you get the thing that you're after, if that was the focus, the excitement will fade after 2, 3, 4 days, whether it's money or weight loss. It's the process, falling in love with that. And I think it's so powerful that we're talking about this, because once you pay attention to the work, you see the greatest people in the world, they're all doing this. You see, I was watching The Founder, the Ray Kroc, that biography, it's a great movie, but you see that he was listening to those tapes every single night when he was 50 years old, selling milkshake machines before, or you see Jim Carrey wrote the check to himself for $10 million and kept it in his wallet. I mean, you see the signs of it when you realize that the greatest people, they immerse themselves in this process. They do. It's not rah. It's not a bunch of, it's important because you have to program that. It just doesn't have, I feel like so many people hope to get lucky more than anything else. They just hope to stumble upon it or get lucky or win the lottery or the right opportunity lands in their lap. And they've skipped the work. And even if they do get lucky, they miss the point because they don't appreciate the result. It was the process to get there and that visualization. So just,
somebody once said the harder I work, the luckier I get. Right. So there's gotta be some truth to that. There's so many great stories about like what you're saying there, John, like Pitbull. And I'm not a Pitbull music fan, I guess. I don't know, but I am a fan of what Pitbull did with his life, has done with his life beyond music. I mean, he's just an absolute rock star when it comes to inspiring people, young people, and business. And Pitbull grew up with his mom, who was, I believe, a housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to Tony Robbins tapes in the car. Les Brown, at the age of 10 years old, was sweeping the floors of a businessman who listened to motivational tapes every morning. And, it's, my own story, my transformation took place when I found one audio tape that I liked listening to. There's, you got to find somebody you like listening to, right? If you don't like their style or, how they speak, or it's not going to work, right? Go find somebody you love listening to. So, in 1979, when I was making my transformation, there weren't very many people to listen to. I found a guy named Paul J. Meyer who was reading a keynote speech that he wrote. And I'm just, people that read speeches, I think, are crazy, but it's all I could find. But I listened to it, John, thousands of times.
Right.
Thousands of times. It was a 30-minute keynote speech about goal setting. And it changed me. And it didn't change me into who I am today. It changed me just enough so the next time an opportunity came along, and opportunities we're flooded with them every day.
That's right.
Most of us see the opportunities with red light and yellow light visions, and we fend them off, right? But I leaned in just enough to quit doing this and do this, which I took a little bit of a different person to embrace an opportunity. But when you embrace an opportunity, you produce a new result. Hey, that's satisfying. And what we're talking about earlier about the end result, all right? Like, I'm a pilot and I'm into boating, and there's no two greater examples of how success is not the destination.
Right.
Everybody that's ever bought a 30-foot boat, they may have dreamed of owning a 30-foot boat their whole life. They may have worked for it their whole life. And as soon as they get the 30-foot boat, they go into misery mode because they're surrounded by 32, 34, 36, 38-foot boats. And it's the same thing with airplanes, right? Everybody buys their first airplane. Oh, I got a Cessna 172. I'm so cool. The world is my oyster. I have freedom everywhere. And then you're parked next to a 182, and you're like, why do I have this piece of junk plane? That's not success. Success is, as Napoleon Hill said, the progressive realization, progress. That's all you and I need.
That's right.
All we need is progress. We need for today or this week or this month to be a little bit better than last month. And we'll stay in the game. So how much transformation do you really need? How much do you need to tap in to the most powerful essence in the history of the universe to make a little tiny bit of progress? You don't need to tap into it very much. And the people that do tap into it, they live magnificent lives. And it's not like they achieve everything they want. John, I know we've failed more than we've succeeded. 10 times more. 10 times, easily 10 times more. But, we've all seen that graphic, right? What does success look like? It, looks like all these train wrecks and all this, right? Well, what do we keep doing because we're who we are? Is stay engaged, bounce back, stay engaged, bounce back, stay creative, solve the problems, pivot, change, right? Adapt, study, get better, right? That's who we are. Absolutely. So if that's who you are, this is what your graph looks like. And if somebody looked at it, 30 years later, it would look like, well, let's see. I bought that house in Livingston, California for $11,000. There's a picture of it on my website I took 2 years ago. It has bushes growing out of the windows. It's completely abandoned. I sold it for $21,000 4 years later. And Livingston, California is like, okay, no offense to the people that live in Livingston, but there's better places to live in the world. And now I live on a 90,000 acre private island in Hawaii. It's the largest private island in the world. There's only 3,000 people that live there. There's no stoplights, one grocery store, one gas station. And it's owned, not our home, but the island is owned by Larry Ellison, net worth $85 billion.
Who just moved there permanently, I heard.
Permanently moved there. I mean, we're in paradise. And did I have to become the most successful person in the world to do that? No. Not even remotely. Right. We're probably the poorest people that live in our neighborhood. but we live there.
That's all that matters. That is amazing. I love your story and I love the philosophy. So just to wrap up with a couple like action steps for the people listening, you followed a lot of really great people. And I hope that the big thing that people have taken from this is that, it doesn't matter where you're at right now, you can absolutely reprogram your mind, change your life in a very short window of time. What are like maybe some of the top 2-3 books that you recommend that somebody's listening to this, they're like, man, I need to get started, that they should pick up or they should follow or watch their work? Like, who had the biggest impact on you that you feel like is still just as relevant today for someone that's listening to this interview to just take the next step in action?
Well, if the way your mind works is a little more, analytical, I would suggest Psycho-Cybernetics. Now that is an old classic book, but it's the first and best book to describe how the mind works for manifestation. And everybody from Tony Robbins to Lou Tice to, anybody who's Bob Proctor, everybody studied Psycho-Cybernetics 1,000 times. So, hey, and it's probably a $10 book on Amazon. It's a paperback. You can probably, get it for free somewhere, and it's an ebook. Study it. The Magic in Believing by Claude Bristol. If you're more inclined to the simple explanation, The Magic in Believing by Claude Bristol. Anything by Richard Bach. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Illusions, Richard Bach, great author on the art of manifestation. Price Pritchard, a little book, I've given hundreds and hundreds of them away, called U Squared. U with a little 2 in the top right corner.
Writing that down. Awesome.
Dr. Price Pritchard. And, there's hundreds and hundreds of books. I tend to go for the classics because almost every other book, including mine, is just somebody who read a half a dozen books and said, oh, I'm going to write my own book.
Well said. Like, that, really, right?
They read.
That's hilarious. Well, because at the end of the day, right, I can't remember. I am just now finishing my book, and it's basically it's called World Class Mentors, the science at building your dream circle. And I did a lot of research on that book, on just how many books on personal development are actually written every week and every month. And, a lot of them get their roots from the same, 5, 10, the classics, right? Like The Richest Man Who Ever Lived, The Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, because they're foundationed in principles and just such good wisdom. So to finish up, for everybody listening to this interview, what's the best way to follow your work? What do you have going on? Obviously, you have a phenomenal coaching and transformation business. You help entrepreneurs for those that want and need that kind of help. But where are you putting your content out? What is your business focused on? And how can people follow your work and connect with you personally?
The simplest way to find me is my website. I'm old school, right? So richardbrooke.com, BROOKE. I am on Facebook as Richard Bliss Brooke. I use Bliss, which is actually my middle name. And, and I never even saw it as an affirmation. But how crazy is that, right? So I'm on Facebook as Richard Bliss Brooke. I have a group called The Authentic Networker. That's on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I have to tell you, I don't understand Instagram. That's how old school I am.
I think if you just put lots and lots of pictures of your property in Lanai Island, you'll build a big following. You don't even need to put out content on Instagram, just pictures.
Here's me on Instagram, okay? It's Susie, my assistant. She's me on Instagram. And I just got on Clubhouse. I don't know if that's going to have traction or not, but I resist social media, even though it's a necessary evil for business. I'm an advocate of people being present and doing the work, and very cautious about anything that distracts one from the work.
That's right.
And all new social media platforms distract people from doing the work.
It's so true. The guy, John Paul Mitchell, the billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, has no email, has no social media, could care less. Everybody has like this difficult way of getting a hold of him. I was listening to a podcast, and what the guy had to do to get him to do an interview, because he had no way to contact him. It's okay.
When we're billionaires, we don't have to have social media, right?
That's exactly right.
We have to show people pictures of our food and our waves and our golf game in order to get to be a billionaire.
That's exactly right. Richard, this has been
the most popular person on my whole social media platform is our dog, Marley. When Marley does something funny, we make millions. When I say something profound that's never been said in the history of the world, that has the potential to shift the trajectory of the world in a good way, as a quantum leap, that's the response I get.
Yeah, no, it's the number one earner on YouTube last year was a 10-year-old boy named Ryan, who literally his whole channel, he made $30 million last year on YouTube. He opens up kids' toys and does a review for other kids of the toy and plays with it. So yeah, that's the world we live in. It's
good for him.
Tell somebody something profound and you'll get 4 likes, but you know what? It's okay. Richard, this has been an incredible interview. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I hope to have you on here again one day in the future to cover just another aspect of what you've done and the work that you do. I just felt our best use of time was just covering the mind, because so few people know how to really change that. It's just like we all start out the year with goals and ambitions and motivations. We end the year wondering what the absolute hell happened. Yeah. And it's just, I don't think anybody will ever break that cycle unless they really have a roadmap for fixing it. And I think you gave people that today. And my hope is that they'll pick up your book, follow your work. I hope you write more books, because I really enjoy reading them. But I just want to say thank you for giving everybody a lot of wisdom today, and appreciate having you on.
Hey, thank you, John. It's a great honor. You do beautiful, beautiful, creative mentoring work in the world, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about what you do.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.